So I guess I'm going to ask first question, if you had to make one major recommendation for how we use tech transfer, or maybe some element of capital transfer associated with tech transfer to really solve the climate change problem, what would it be? Right?
So I kind of view it the same way, to put it into context of buying a house, right? If you were going to purchase your home and the county or the state had a requirement that the builder had to have that 10% of the value had to be invested in the house in something that is renewable. That cost is so modest, amortized over 30 years, you would do it. But if you had to put the solar panels in after the house is built, you won't, most of us, except for Raj. So we have to make it easier when we talk about financing activities. We can legislate the environmental impact as part of the movement of capital. And if we do that, I think most companies and individuals, they will look at it as a truly modest little investment because it's spread out over the amortization period of the capital. And I think just those little changes would make a big difference.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Raj?
One thing that as I see things around the world, we talk of high-tech technologies. But there are technologies that have been available for thousands of years in rural India and rural communities around the world. They, with their experience of seeing nature, how it behaves, they have ways to manage it and do it more efficiently. But we just don't listen to them. So there is a group in India started by a professor of at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He started what called a honeybee network. He said, let us, like the honeybee collects honey from so many different flowers. Let's go to the villagers and collect their wisdom and utilize it. And that is so tremendous because I'm involved with Engineers Without Borders. And one thing I tell people, students who go to projects around the world, is get to know what these people want, what they already know, before you impose a technology or a solution on them. So we have to be cognizant of the community and cognizant of what they already know instead of thinking as technologists we know things that they have to implement. So better listening, better community involvement is a solution for better technology transfer.
Great, thank you. Questions from the audience, please.
My question is actually, I referred to a brainstorming session I attended yesterday regarding the same issues in Whitefield, 40 kilometers away. And this rural economy, 2/3 of India population lives there. And we are constantly talking about decentralized technologies here, which can be taken there. In the context of that, these migrations which have happened majorly, that people do not have income sources in rural India and coming, and that's how this traffic and all this, 30,000 people live in per square kilometer of Delhi, Mumbai, and you go 1 hour out of Bombay and Delhi, it's only 300 people in per square kilometer. The point that I bring to your attention is that if there was a master plan working with the rural and urban synergy, so the border areas where the economic activities take place, rural area people need not come inside the city for income. If there is such a plan which is compatible with environment, wealth creation, is there a thought in your group somewhere, because you're constantly talking about capital outlay, which is more harmonious for this kind of a, is that some forum or something is there? Please share.
So I can just share with you from my, as a CEO perspective, because we have the same issue in any place. In Chennai, for example, we are limited in our ability to hire because of traffic, right? I asked our employees, and as a Westerner, it was shocking, and I said, how long is your commute? The average employee has an hour to an hour and a half, and I said, just curious, how far do you live from the office? And they said, oh gosh, I live 15 kilometers. That is shocking, okay? So at the end of the day, you're never going to grow the GDP of India if you don't address the traffic. And so as CEO, what we did is we have in the United States, for example, moved offices to areas that were less congested. And you know, you start that grassroots there, and it's all about access to employees. But we're forced to do that because the labor market is so tight. And so part of it has to be the companies have to get over the fact that there is a lot of people to hire, and they're going to have to see the value in doing that. We're collaborative people. We want to work together, and so they're going to have to move that industrial process out to those remote areas. And I just think economically it makes sense.
This January, I was at a village in southern India called Manjakudi. And it was a sleepy town of 250 people. Now there are 30,000 people there. Why? Because lack of education, kids were moving out to cities. So one spiritual leader there who saw this need, when people told him about it, he mobilized resources to build high schools, colleges, and a university up to the PhD level. And when Wipro, one of the largest internet companies in the world, they saw that there are the talent pool right there, and there's internet connectivity right there. They moved 150 people. They started an office right close to campus, and they had most of the people who are graduated from here, brought some of their key people from Bengaluru to Manjakudi. I can tell you the quality of life in Manjakudi is 1,000 times better. Fresh air, you can walk, you can do green things, you can see everywhere. But all it took is one person's leadership to move, to get the schooling facilities, to develop the skills right there. So industries move there instead of these people trying to move to industry and creating more problems in cities.
Great. Question?
Since there are so many opinion makers and shapers over here, I have two thoughts to share with you. A, from an academic perspective, I think we need to move away from just having civil, mechanical, and electrical engineers to bio-civil engineers, biomechanical engineers, and bioelectrical engineers, which means that these students should not only be exposed to the college atmosphere, they should be taken out into the ecosystem and understand the nuances of ecosystem and see how to bring it back into mainstream use, number one. Number two, you rightly pointed out about the food waste. America has a very beautiful policy on food waste. It's called the Bill Emerson Food Donation Good Samaritan Act, something of that sort, wherein it identifies organizations which are giving their leftover food respectfully, and in 20 years' time or in 21 years' time, if there's a problem with the food, poisoning or something, they are not hung. They are treated differently. In our country, I will never give my leftover food to the underprivileged because if there's a problem, I go behind bars as a non-bailable offense. So how do we in India engage with the government so that particular good policy comes to India also, because this will help in reducing food wastage and making sure that the 30 crore people who go to bed hungry every night don't go hungry.
I'm very proud to say that I've been involved with the Greater Chicago Food Bank for the last 25 years. And that is the most excellent model of where this organization, funded by donors and image makers in Chicago, get all the food that is going to be wasted away by the produce market or by big companies like General Mills and others. So they get, and from the US government, USDA. So they have a huge warehouse where they get this food, and for produce which is going to rot in about less than 4 or 5 days, they collect it within 24 hours of knowing about its availability, and within 24 hours deliver it to the needy community. This is the most efficient transfer of excess food that I've seen. That's the reason I've been involved with it. And so I was pushing for that kind of technology to come to, system to come to India. And in the last 8 years, there have been 12 food banks in India, which was unimaginable. So these food banks are working with the government to make sure that people who donate food do not get into non-bailable offenses like that. And so this has to happen. I was talking to the Taj in Coimbatore. They said, we give our excess food to the poor community. So it is happening. So that's what when I come to anywhere and I ask, what do you do with your excess food? They tell me what they're doing. And now more and more people are giving it in a timely manner. And even Starbucks has started a program with the Greater Chicago Food Depository. The number of sandwiches and food that doesn't sell, they intimate there's a truck from Greater Chicago Food Depository at Starbucks at 9:30 p.m. And by next morning, they have delivered it to the people in need. So these are things that are happening. Again, it needs human ingenuity and caring for the people in need, the people having excess, saying, I want to share it in a timely manner.
So, Pinnakin?
Yeah. First, I'd like to thank both of you being a champion for the alumni and doing all the hard work behind the scene. And since you have been doing so much work, I have a question. I have visited campus a few years ago, and I also visited the business incubator. And there were like 25 companies. Can you comment? I see some of these companies' technology can be valuable to alumni as well as to India. Mm-hmm. Is there some example you can give us? And also maybe in the future, this could be an opportunity for tech transfer, that IIT is nurturing those startup companies, and maybe alumni and the efforts, and particularly the India. I would welcome your comments from both of you.
I recently visited a company at the tech campus, technology park, called Hazel Technologies. I heard about their technologies on WBZ when I was driving. And they have a technology to increase the shelf life of fruits, vegetables, so that they don't rot in a week. They can stay for a month. So I went and talked to them. This was just 2 weeks before I came. I couldn't meet the right people. But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to meet those people and say, what is your technology? What does it take to transfer it to India? Because so much food gets wasted by not having enough proper storage. How do we treat this so that it can be not wasted, but available to people in need? So that's an example. There's many like that.
Yeah, I guess I would say that when you think about universities and technology parks, there's quite a few of you here that didn't start your company while you were on campus, right? And so as part of the alumni board, what we have to do is pick these examples, myself included, and pick these examples to think of the university in a longer term. In other words, as an alumni, you're still part of that incubator, right? You just graduated a little while ago, right? We don't have to be on campus. And I think if you look at the totality of the alumni and say, look at all of the companies, I would say myself would be the example because I started my company and we have an operation here, right? And so you have to kind of look at the alumni in its whole. The university just made the investment for those that are still local, that are close to the contact point, right? But you've got to extend that view out decades, and you'll see that there's quite a few examples, and a lot of you in the room are great examples of that.
Great. Ivan?
Hi, good afternoon. We are Arantxa Querol and Ivan Cabrera from the Polytechnic University of Valencia. Arantxa, she's at the School of Industrial Engineering, and I am at the School of Architecture. And we've got a question about the social engagement and the social awareness. Maybe a too big percentage of the world's population strives daily for survival, but those of us that are luckier, we strive daily for different things, for love, for happiness, occasionally for success, but mostly for comfort. And it's the understanding and comfort and the paradigm of success what worries us. and which is maybe because what we need for saving this comfort and this success many times goes against what should be done in order to prevent the climate change. Think about this room, for instance. We are thinking about climate change, but we have daylight, but we have drawn the curtains, and we have the bulbs on. We have a wonderful weather here, but we have the air conditioned on. So many times, our understanding of comfort goes against fighting the climate change. I was quite shocked about the pollution map in the 50s and the evolution through the 2000s. And it was quite obvious that those that strive for survival, they barely pollute. Those that strive for comfort are those that pollute. So how could we, from technology and from the academia and from the park technologies, work on this switch in our understanding of comfort?
So again, I can just share my personal experience. I personally believe that the success in the United States is attributed to one organization only, and it is our academic institutions. I told my children the other day that when I was a child, people would just take the trash that you ate at McDonald's or whatever, they just throw it on the street. They were horrified. There was trash everywhere when I was a kid. People would just throw it, and my children looked at me like I was around with horse and carriage. Okay, I told my children to clean the room. They don't complain, but I tried to put a plastic container in the trash, and I was chastised by a 12-year-old about the environment, and I had to recycle. So all of this is coming from the educational system. My employees, I have to hound them to enter their time into the system. But it took one email that said, hey, we're trying to donate food for Harvest for the Hungry, which is for a homeless shelter. It took one email, and we had 124 donations. It takes 50 to get them to enter their time. So I think there is the universities all the way down to the grammar schools. We have a huge success story in the United States. We have a whole generation of young employees who refuse to accept the argument of comfort over the environment. And I can't speak for education systems outside the United States, but it's clear to me that our universities down to the elementary schools deserve a lion's share of the credit for where we are today. And I would think that that is easily reproducible, right, as long as we have these discussions and as long as we continue those discussions in wherever we live. Because I do believe I have personally seen the change across the United States in the last 25 years. And the trash that laid on the roads, we still have some, but nobody in their right mind would ever throw a soda can outside the window today. And that was a regular occurrence when I was a child.
Great, Malali. I'm sorry, we have so many hands up right now, and I'm calling in order. So please, Malali.
Thank you. So it's my personal view. If any climate change you want to address, we have to look at the geography of the Earth. I'm not saying west, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, particularly tropical regions. So Earth already made a decision. The biologically very active in this zone. I'm happy. I'm from the part of the tropical zone. So I was in the US. 6 months, the entire forest will be, there is a forest, there are no leaves to harvest the sun. So we have 365 days harvesting sun to the entire year. So I think some of the technologies West have it, particularly I like the weather prediction in the US, 2 o'clock. Exactly rain at 2 o'clock. I like that actually. I was not seen. I was argument with meteorologist in Agriculture University where I come from. He said we have a fantastic technology, but still the prediction is not as precise. The possibility is the dynamics of atmosphere is very, very, very volatile in the tropical. What you get in the south, hurricanes, is not the problem. US created it. Tropical. Africa, desert heats up, then everybody packs from Florida towards New York or whatever. So the investment, I think mostly, I'm talking a perspective in India, is a very amicable plus agriculture. We're forgetting the agriculture because we need a very disruptive technology, disrupt the people from the city, go back to the villages, where the comforts, I think transport is available, communication is available in every village. The only problem is economy. So when you invest, why I'm taking the forest, we need, again I'm taking reforestation, but unless you buy a wood, unless you make use of the product, they will not going to be sustained. We need industries for it produce, at the same time tropical regions in the ocean. I think that needs to be more addressed. So that if you address the tropical, automatically, the temperate regions, at least 50% of the effect can be felt. Another reason is why it's tropical is, if you take a 5-acre area, 5 hectare in the Western Ghats, I've done very amazed, literature survey. Entire 2 continents, Europe and America, the diversity exists, plants, animals, is just a 5-acre area. So maybe twice the building of this building. So it's amazing diversity in the tropical. I think we need to preserve and use that for the mankind. I think.
I agree 100%. My request to you is bring your technology that you have developed here to California, because the forest fires there are so unimaginable, creating so much damage to property and humans every time we see it. And we spend billions of dollars just fighting the problem instead of seeing what the root problem is and fixing it. So I agree with you. So I request you to convey some of these ideas to people in California, and whatever I can do to help in that, I will do. Thank you.
So I hope everyone's okay. We're eating up the lunch hour a little bit, but as time goes on, we get more and more questions and arms go up. So we're going to continue, please.
Dr. Peter, I have got a different technical attachment with IIT. I have got 50 years of my consulting and factory experience. I would like to give honorary service to any of the postgraduate student, preferably in engineering. If he wants to start the industry, I've got about 300 projects which I submit to High Court Bombay, banks and official liquidator and court receiver. There are projects, techno-economic viability study. Anybody comes to my home, Shiv Kumar knows my address, he comes with the empty hand, takes in his head whatever he can. I don't want any force. He may take it, he may not take it, but I can help him in starting a consulting or a small scale industry or a medium scale industry. I am no more good in a big industries and a large industries. So this is an offer to any of the IIT alumni on an honorary basis. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, I think I'll just try. I will try to address the question which you raised, because a very, very basic question, and I think as what the summing up the whole thing could be, because the whole idea is social sector and what we do in technology. So if I have listened to a lot of people, right, including Nobel laureates and scientists, this question comes up every time, that do we make this decision of not eating meat, of not putting the air conditioners down, turning vegan, will it have it more impact or the other things? But actually, this argument of changing personal habits and changing your attitude to life, it's a very slow process. If you want to even make me change even a small thing, it'll take you a few years of education, and probably a number of educations to turn me probably into a vegan, or if I'm a vegan, into a meat eater. So the whole idea is, the elephant in the room is actually the energy. What is powering all the system today, last 100 years is being powered by fossil fuels. That is the energy, that's the electricity we are getting today. So actually the elephant in the room is the technology, the industry. If we can find the solutions to this, if we can get the energy from a cleaner sources like sun, we can even, what is the biggest problem with water is, we have 70% of the planet is water. But we can't drink because the TDS level is 20,000. But if we have technology, like solar technology, which is free of cost, and it can just desalinate all the water we want, in that case, instead of oil, we'll be putting pipelines for water around the world. So that's the whole idea. The elephant in the room is how do we change our energy systems and what drives the technology. If that can be changed, probably attitudinal change will be fine.
I would say one thing on food, which I find fascinating in the connection to technology, is that, again, for me personally, and as the economy develops, I would encourage people not to follow the U.S. in certain areas. And one of those is the number of people who eat out and how easy it is to buy pre-made food. You know, my recommendation is teach your children how to cook. If there's a technology that just buying a sealer, a vacuum sealer to seal food that we cook at home, okay, has cut my food bill in half. And just teaching children how to, so there's less waste, less garbage, the food price goes down, and with that, you know, the consumption changes. You change the model. So just little things that we knew, everybody knew how to cook. Well, you know, most in the United States, I'm embarrassed to say, a lot of young people don't know how to cook. So they go buy out, which buys more waste. It's more trash. It's more garbage. And so just, you can go back to the basics, teach them how to cook, and investments in food storage, okay, would go a long way, right? You can save food for a year, vacuum sealed, but what if you could save it for 2 years and still preserve the same taste, right? I mean, that would be incredible.
So I think that the issues that have been brought up here are you know, all true, all things to be done. But there's something else going on that we're not discussing, and that's our wish to be continuously connected to everything, our wish to take a photograph of everything, a wish now to take a video of everything, all being stored somewhere in the cloud, but not a cloud, as was pointed out, in a place that's chewing up an enormous amount of energy. I mean, I think if we don't just solve one thing, is that everyone shouldn't have 4 or 5 devices that are wireless at any time. And everyone shouldn't be charging batteries continuously. Because if you just say, what does every human want to have? A mobile phone. What does every human want to have? Connectivity. And if we just look at that, and look at the energy needs based on that, we have a major problem. Because there's no way to keep solving that because our energy needs keep going up. And it's one thing to say we should use clean energy. But we cannot actually build enough solar panels. And by the way, if we did that, do we really want to cover all the ground with solar panels and then you can't grow anything? No one ever talks about the fact that solar panels need to be cleaned continuously or they don't work. You know, the places where solar panels actually are the best are in desert areas. It's the place where you get most dust, so you need people to clean them all the time. So there's an issue here, I think, that you can't solve it just by saying we need to go with wind, because now all of a sudden there's no birds, there's no bats, because all of the wind farms are killing the birds. You can't go with all solar because you start looking at the amount of space this would take. It doesn't work. We have to work on everything. It's not one or the other. It's not we fix this, get away from, you know, by the way, if we don't want to have polymers anymore, and we're not going to use polymers anymore, that's a big issue for us, because that's what's coming from the oil also. And then we have the polymer waste, and if we're no landfill, we can't have the polymers. So this problem is much bigger than, there's no simple solution here. The fact is all solutions are right, but if we don't change the whole viewpoint of humanity on what they need to exist, then there is no solution to this. Because we're seeing the biggest mass migration of humanity in the last 20 years from the countryside to the city. 30 million people a year in China alone move from the countryside into a city. You say concrete is the enemy. Well, without concrete, you couldn't build the houses for those 30 million people to live in China, because concrete's cheap. You know, and everyone says you're going to get into, well, you shouldn't be using steel, you shouldn't be using concrete, you shouldn't be using glass. Well, come up with something that's cheaper. There is nothing that's cheaper. So this is an amazing time, I think. And the one thing I will say is that since we live with the young people all the time, you're absolutely right about the young of today. When we see the new students coming, all of them, and you can look at Greta from Norway as just indicative of the young people, they're really concerned about what the future is of the planet. But actually they're part of the problem, because I don't think they're giving up the phones. And I think in the end we're going to have to give up the phones. And we're going to have to give up charging. And we're going to have to give up this situation that we think we should take a photograph of every minute in our life and store it somewhere and then never look at it again.
Leave it to the boss to come up with the next generation issue, right? Because
so I think on that note, we've had many questions and many responses and many comments. I think we've covered the waterfront of issues and hopefully some solutions.